All right, hello and welcome to another Ask a Maker Educator discussion. Ask a Maker Educator is a live online series designed to share those insights and expertise from amazing educators like these two amazing Maker educators we have. They're going to help us today try to find potential solutions to those problems related to making and academic content, and also feel free to share your queries and challenges as well online. I'm Jessica Parker. I'm the Director of Community and Learning here at MakerEd, and we're so lucky to have two of my favorite educators from Sonoma County Office of Education, Casey Shea and Anna. Anna, oh, remind me how to pronounce your last name. I'm so sorry.
Van Dordrecht. It's really hard.
Van Dordrecht. Awesome. It's an amazing name. Thank you for helping me. Today, to our Ask a Maker Educator discussion, the topic we're going to tackle is making an academic content with these two folks. So for those of you watching online, please use that chat box on the right of your YouTube to go ahead and submit your questions and chat online with other viewers, or go ahead and use Twitter and the hashtag #AskAMakerEducator to submit your questions and insights. There's also the submission page on our website as well. So why don't we dive in? Casey, Anna, can you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves? Who are you and why should we care?
Sure. My name is Casey Shea. I'm the coordinator of Maker Education here at the Sonoma County Office of Education. And about 7 years ago, I was fortunate enough to start a class in the headquarters of Maker Media with Dale Doherty called Project Make. And before that, I was a math teacher. I was never been really the most traditional math teacher, but all the experiences and tools and technology and just the new mindset that I was really able to, just immerse myself into through that experience totally changed my career. And every year from that first year, I dropped one math. This year is the first year I'm not in the classroom at all, but as the curriculum coordinator for Maker Education, I get a chance to work in our design lab. I get to go to other schools, K-12 schools, and work in their classroom, and then do a bunch of other exciting things like Maker Certificate Program and things that hopefully we'll be able to talk about soon.
And my name is Anna Van Dordrecht, and I'm the coordinator for science education here at the Sonoma County Office of Education. Also high school. Up until this year, I taught high school science, or science and biology. In the last 2 years, I split my time between the county office and the classroom, and now I'm fully here. I have a few different roles. One is as California, we have switched to the next generation science, so statewide, to help people figure out how they're going to implement those, how 21st century learning and science pair well together. And in that role, making plays a really big part of that. So express what they're learning and be creative and engaged in what they're learning, and really develop strategies and tools that will help them get jobs in the 21st century. A big part of that is communication and storytelling and education, but especially right now it's being emphasized in science, and making is a really important way to get students to do those things.
Awesome. Well, welcome you guys. We appreciate it. Let's start with the tough one. How does that sound? Since you guys brought up the next generation science standards, NGSS, here in California, could you talk about how making aligns with these new standards that incorporate not only science, but also engineering?
Yeah, definitely. So the next generation science standards is based on the idea of three-dimensional learning. And the idea behind that is that students are simultaneously experiencing engineers do. That's called the science and engineering practices. And they are also learning content. They call it the disciplinary core ideas in physical science, life science, and earth and space. A big picture of science and what kinds of themes go all the way through every discipline. That's called the cross-cutting concepts. Different topics, and we siloed experiencing science and learning about it. Now they're supposed to be getting all of that at once. One of the big shifts as they moved to NGSS was increase, because what they found as they started to interview scientists and look at what's happening in the workforce is that engineering and science are really being paired over and over again in what's possible. We just got back from a trip to NASA, and we very, very clearly, they are engineers, but they are also scientists, and they're having to hold both skills at once. So the idea is to bring those together in what students are experiencing and how they're approaching science and approaching the world. And so that's one area that we use a lot of making as they do prototypes and they're trying to solve real world problems.
We've found that there's a lot of angst among elementary teachers, and specifically because they're not in their minds engineers, right? So we've got and and, 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 process, an iterative cycle, and just solving problems really fit into what the the NGSS is calling for. But also, if we can weave those into other elements, then one of the main things that people have a problem with, we get pushback in, is where am I going to find time for this?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of this being an add-on, how can we embed these philosophies so that we can make what you have to do anyway more engaging and interesting for the teacher?
Great points, you guys. Could you talk about then the ways that you've actually integrated? I know people throw around the acronym of STEAM a lot: science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Could you talk about how making has been infused, at least in your county, up in Sonoma, Northern California, how you guys have actually talked about STEAM so it doesn't feel like an add-on for making, but it feels like really an integration or a cross-disciplinary approach to making in K-12?
So we're seeing, so for anyone who doesn't know, STEAM adds in the art to STEM. So it's science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. When all of those are integrated, then you really can address issues and problems and real world phenomena beyond what can happen if you're siloing those. And then making provides a tool and a venue to do that. So you get some purpose and a lens through STEAM integration. And it's what students are looking for. They don't really want to go to math class, go to science class, and have it all be separate. They want to see how it all applies together. But then they need some tools and some vehicle in order to apply those, and making provides that for them.
One of Anna's students, I believe it was last year, also talked about just in their science class, students are tired of solving problems that have been solved for 100 years. Instead of going through a lab and getting a result that the teacher wants to have, they're interested and excited in trying to solve problems that need solving. So we're doing the students a disservice and ourselves a disservice by not giving them those opportunities. And those opportunities come into play always when you're making something, if you've got an idea in your mind and you want to end up with a product in your hand, which is really one of the main tenets of making, you're going to run into problems that require some creative problem solving. Issues, creative problem-solving techniques, and those are exactly what they're going to need to be able to survive and thrive in the world that is full of jobs that don't even exist right now.
Yeah, great point.
And another thing that same student said, so she, interestingly enough, got to intern last summer for a biotech company called Medtronic, and we had her come back before she left for college to say, well, what did you get in school that helped you, and what could you have gotten more of? And she said she didn't have enough experiences going from nothing to something, because out in an internship, they're given a problem and they're told, come up with a prototype, come up with a solution. And they have tons of tools at their disposal, but they don't know which ones to use or what problem. She said, I have that in school can do with STEAM investigations and making better.
Awesome. That's a great example, you guys. Thank you. So could you talk about then if you've been implementing NGSS, you've seen STEAM happening across either K5, K8, K12. Could you talk about then some of the benefits for all students with making within this type of environment, and even talk about potential populations like special ed, like English language learners? Could you give us examples of what you see happening?
Yeah. So I would say one big benefit for all students is the level of engagement. The difference between them following
Oh, sorry. And I think you're frozen.
only that, they would bring other friends with them that weren't even part of the class.
So you froze for a second.
That's cookie cutter.
Do you mind restating?
Yeah, no problem. So I would say a big benefit for all students is the high level of engagement and what that is. So I would see in my classroom and want to finish those projects on their own time, and they would bring their friends with them because they asked to show them what was going on. And that doesn't happen with a typical assignment that they're given that's more cookie cutter. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah. Another thing that's good for students and good for teachers as well is that when you open up these making philosophies into your content area, the students differentiate the projects on their own. So instead of a teacher having to make up, different levels to meet students' needs, the students will reach their own ceiling, right? And oftentimes I've seen students who, surprise me at the level of effort and perseverance they'll put in one of these projects. When I've over the years, I've had students in a math class and then in the making class, and the difference in the way that the students interact with problems, interact with projects, you get a fuller sense of what the student is capable of.
And I would say for English learners in particular, there's really three things that, well, there's more than three, but three that can be identified readily that are a benefit for making. The first is their willingness to communicate. So I last year had a student who she maybe said 2 sentences the whole year to me. She was an English learner until we did a making project. And then she actually stopped me on her own and said, well, do you want me to tell you about this? And of course I wanted her to. And she talked for like 5 minutes straight without ever taking a breath because she was so excited that it was hers. And she was willing to communicate and take a risk, even if it wasn't perfect English. I think a second thing is that what we're finding over and over again for English learners is that our traditional method is to teach something and then give them hands-on about it. But that doesn't work for them because they don't, when they're learning that vocabulary at the outset, they don't have enough frame of reference for it. It's much more helpful for them to first get the experience and then want to know what academic vocabulary. And then the third thing is they just recently did a study where they found that particularly in science, when you pair hands-on activities and innovative approaches like making with the science content, that's where English progress. They're accelerating their learning because they're getting that conversation in that context, and then they're using formal language.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just want to add too that by not front-loading with a lot of verbal language and making with lack of in the English language, it tends to elevate the status of some kids where they can show what they know through nonverbal communication, right, and nonverbal levels, in ways that if I'm just going to talk, I need to talk. If it's all verbal or even written, the danger is that the EL students are going to stay on the sidelines, right? But if they're making something, it doesn't matter. It's making each language, right? So if kids have some talent in a certain area, they're going to be seen by the other students in the classroom, and that elevates their status, and they're more likely to want to communicate, talk about their particular solution to a problem or how they came up with a certain method after they've got something to show.
Great point. So you did mention earlier on in our discussion that communication and storytelling were a big part really of NGSS as well in terms of the standards, and not just
mm-hmm.
NGSS.
Yeah. So this shows up, storytelling obviously was our earliest form of education and an early form of communication. Everyone loves story. We're wired to listen to it, to remember it. And so they're trying to capitalize on that in all of education right now, but particularly in science, they see a few different benefits of that. One is that students learn better through story and they get a bigger scope of science. They tend to think of it as just stuff that you memorize and regurgitate. And instead, if they hear the stories of what's gone on in science and the real scientists that have done the work, they develop a bigger picture. And then second, if they are actually doing any kind of hands-on passive learners. And the third thing is scientists are notoriously bad in engineering how to communication, and that's really a problem in an age of social media. They need a wide audience to be interested in their work and to want it to continue. And they're seeing story as a big part of how they can do that. If you tell the story of your work instead of just putting out some facts and numbers, then you get a larger audience.
Great. Hey, you know what, Anna, you actually froze on number 2. Do you mind repeating the second point you were making?
Yeah, so number 2 is that it's really important, they're finding, for students to identify their own story within science. So they're getting these hands-on and engineering experiences, but they're also taking time to verbalize, this is my science story. So that it's not simply that they're passively learning science, but they're an active part of it, and they can envision doing careers beyond that.
So they're really identifying with science. They're saying, I'm part of this journey. I'm not just waiting to become a scientist or waiting to put on my white lab coat. I'm doing it now. I'm part of this.
Right, definitely.
And the story of those scientists, the lives that they led and how they became who they are. I think there's some inspiring stories and some things that we can share with kids as well.
Exactly. Could you talk about examples that you guys have done in terms of showcasing student work? How have you helped promote kind of students sharing what they've done, communicating what they've done, especially through hands-on making?
Yeah. Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
So one thing we've really found is that it's important as these kids are developing who they are in science and in STEAM and in making, that they have an authentic audience to share that with, and that they're getting feedback from adults other than just their teacher, and that it doesn't just become another assignment. So one thing we did here was we looked at student events that we run as a county and how we could provide a venue for students to showcase what they're doing. And what we settled on was the science fair as it existed for us really didn't fit with the next generation science standards with 21st century learning, because we were very constrained by what height the trifold had to be and what specific elements had to be on it, and all the different criteria that existed. So instead, this year we moved to a STEAM showcase, and the idea behind that was of at least 2 areas of STEAM, and they had to be a purpose for their project beyond just showcasing at the STEAM showcase. And then they got to share that with
audience. We had K through 5, right, and a whole other
adults and with
group of kids who were involved. And then also a special ed class did one of the most heartfelt entries that we had. They did some dance project about gas and that Anna knows more about, but it was very very beautiful. And some of the comments from the class were that they wouldn't. It did change what was going on in their classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. They said, we wouldn't have done science in our class at all if it were not for this. We've got kids that really, they showed a ton of initiative that you don't necessarily see. Often with science fair, not always, but often they're just doing a checklist because they want to score. But this, they went in a lot of different directions. So we had one girl that was really interested in sea turtles and their conservation, that let people know that sea turtles were endangered and needed to have protection. So she learned how to weld herself. She welded an entire sea turtle sculpture, and then she used that to raise money for sea turtle conservation, and is actively doing that right now.
That sounds like a much better alternative to a school science fair with the trifold. Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to share those links because I think you guys did this recently, and so there's some public links out there that we can send folks. Great. So talk about your own space at Sonoma County Office of Ed. I know that you guys have installed a makerspace called the Design Lab. Could you talk about why you think this is a model really for county offices, but also for K-12 in general in terms of making?
Okay, there's a little lag in the video and audio, so hopefully I'm not stepping on you. But the Design Lab is a place that we put into actually what was a little alcove in the County Office of Education. The top class that I was at the high school foot, old traditional shop class, and so I would have people come in and we would do some workshops and talk about tools, and people would think that they needed this kind of a space to be able to do these kind of activities, and not everybody's going to have an opportunity to get this kind of a space. So we've got something that's less than the square footage of a classroom, but we've got the capabilities in all the areas that we really work on for Maker Education. And after about 7 years of doing this, there's 4 main areas that we really focus on. And one is hands-on STEAM activities that can be done with low-tech tools, glue guns and popsicle sticks and punches and recycled material. My new favorite word is obtainium in different ways, right? So resources like the Community Science Workshop Network and the Tinkering Studio projects page, not really requiring a whole lot of investment in tools and a lot of things that you can repurpose. So that's really popular with a lot of the elementary teachers who were talking about these engineering activities. And areas that coding and physical computing. So we've got Raspberry Pi and Arduino microcontrollers that are somehow interacting with the outside world. How to take those and turn those into academic areas so that your Arduino is not just something that's causing a light to blink, but how does that blinking light inform or draw attention to a certain element that you're looking for. Third element is digital manufacturing. So we have laser cutters, vinyl cutters, 3D printers, CNC mills. And for most of these tools, not only do we have something that's in the design lab, but we're also able to do a lending library. So teachers can come in, educators can come in and learn how to use the tools, learn how they might be used in a project, and then take them back to their site for 3 to 4 weeks and really get their hands dirty in a way they can try before they buy, and also have a chance to show the people on their campus the value of these kind of tools. There's nothing that sells better around, or a student walking around with something that they made and explaining to somebody, look, I made this. Right, the look on their face and the excitement that they have in sharing that is the greatest sales pitch that you can have. Final area is documentation and digital media. So we've got a little wall that's painted with green screen, just green paint that we got from Home Depot, but it works as a documenting your work, documenting your progress. As you know, at Maker Ed is one of the most important aspects of this. If nobody knows what you're doing, then you might as well not be doing it. Right? So sharing all these things with other students, with other teachers, is one of the huge important parts of this. Great. So we have students. Our design lab is mainly for teachers. We've, in the past 6 months or so, had more and more student groups come in from various sizes. Special ed classes, probably we've had 4 to 5 special ed classes come in over the last 4 weeks, and we set up little activities, based on what their interests are. A lot of times we'll talk a couple weeks in advance and give them some design parameters so that they can design graphics or that we laser cut into things. And again, it's opening that door and opening your mind to the fact that if I can think it, the tools exist that I can hold it in my hand. And once that tool becomes as useful or as common as a pen and pencil, then who knows what these kids are going to be able to do.
Great, thanks you guys, wonderful examples. So we're almost down to the wire in terms of our time. How about the last question for both of you? What advice would you give to a teacher, a school administrator, or even a county office person? What would be your advice in terms of where do we start? What do we do when it comes to making an academic content?
Sure. Well, I would say my main advice is, we've talked before, the dream is that there's a makerspace where they're getting to develop a lot more advanced skills. But making is also happening in every class. Oh, wait. Or did we cut out?
Yeah, you guys cut out. Sorry.
Okay, so here's my advice. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Perfect.
Don't be afraid to start small and then go big. So the end goal, the dream would be that you have a makerspace where they're developing really intensive skills, and that making's also happening in every classroom, and they're really seeing how it pairs with everything they're learning and can be applied. But don't wait until all of that is possible. Anything that they're doing that is making and that is getting their own personal voice and story in is helpful for them. So try out whatever you can, and even just with the most simple materials, and see what happens and see what the students are doing and what they want to do to lead you forward.
And I would add, don't do it alone. That there are mentors in your community, wherever you are, who can help you on a daily basis or an ongoing basis. And then there are virtual networks, even if you don't have people in your local area who are likely doing these kind of things. So it's, in our experience here in the county, it's not necessarily that there's 10 teachers at one particular school, but there are 10 teachers within a 20-minute drive of each other, and the networks that have formed across not only school boundary lines and district lines, but grade level lines. Right? I've had amazing conversations with kindergarten teachers that really apply to me and inform my work in ways that I would never have thought of before. As a math teacher, I don't really talk much about kindergarten math versus high school math, but as a maker teacher, there's so many overlaps and so many ways that we can help each other in discussions, and I can learn from people at all different grade levels. So find a community, start a community if you don't have one in your area, but don't try and do it alone.
Great, thanks you guys. So thanks so much to Casey and Anna for joining us today. Thanks to all those participants out there who joined as well. We appreciate it. And join us for another Ask a Maker Educator, probably in a couple of weeks. We have to take next week off because it's our Maker Educator convening, but please look at our website page and you can see when we have another one scheduled. Until next time, everybody, thanks again, Casey and Anna. We really appreciate it.